The rain battered the roof of the old Virginia farmhouse. Each drop a hammer strike against my nerves. I stood in the dim hallway, heart pounding, staring at the closed door to Caleb's roomy brother-in-law, my sister's husband, the man who'd just whispered, "Why don't you try it, Eli? Just once." His voice had been playful, teasing, but his eyes, those blue eyes, held something heavier, something that made my stomach twist and my breath catch. I thought he was joking. I had to think that. Because if he wasn't, then everything I'd buried for years, every stolen glance, every fleeting thought I'd shoved into the darkest corners of my mind, was about to claw its way out. I was 24, a grad student crashing at my sister Hannah's place for the summer, trying to piece together my thesis and my life. Caleb, 10 years older, was the kind of guy who filled a room without trying. Broad shoulders, easy laugh, a mechanic's hands that could fix anything. He was married to Hannah, for God's sake. My sister, the woman who'd raised me after Mom died. Yet here I was, standing outside his door at midnight, the rest of the house asleep, wondering if I'd imagine the way his hand brushed mine at dinner. I pressed my palm against the door, the wood cool under my skin. The farmhouse was old, creaky, full of secrets in its walls. Secrets like mine. Growing up in rural Virginia, I'd learned early to keep my head down, to smile at church, to nod when the pastor ranted about sin. I'd dated girls, played the part, but the truth was a quiet ache I carried alone. I'd never acted on it, never dared, until Caleb's voice, low and deliberate, cracked something open inside me. "Eli," he'd said earlier that evening, leaning across the kitchen table while Hannah was upstairs. "You ever wonder what it's like to just let go?" His words hung in the air, casual but sharp, like a blade disguised as a butter knife. I laughed it off, mumbling something about him being ridiculous, but his gaze didn't waver. And when he stood to clear the dishes, his fingers grazed my wrist, lingering just long enough to make my pulse race. Now, the door loomed like a line I wasn't sure I could cross. I could turn back, crawl into the guest bed, pretend this moment never happened. But my feet didn't move. My hand didn't leave the door. And then, as if the house itself was conspiring, the knob turned, and Caleb stood there, his silhouette framed by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. "You came," he said, voice barely above a whisper. His white t-shirt clung to his frame, and his eyes searched mine, equal parts hope and fear. He stepped aside, leaving the choice to me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and crossed the threshold. The door clicked shut behind me, and the world outside ceased to exist. The room smelled of motor oil and cedar, a mix of Caleb's work and the old furniture. He didn't move closer. Not yet. But the space between us felt alive. Electric. "I didn't think you'd come," he admitted, his voice rough. "I thought, maybe I read you wrong." "You didn't," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. My chest tightened, like I was confessing to a crime. "But the Susit's wrong, isn't it? Hannah's my sister. Your wife." Caleb's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought he'd agree, tell me to leave. Instead, he took a step closer, his boots scuffing the worn floorboards. "I've been fighting this for years, Eli. Not just you. Me. Who I am. What I want." His voice cracked, And I saw it then, the weight he carried. The same weight I'd shouldered my whole life. I love Hannah. I do. But it's different. It's not about her. It's about us. Us. The word hit me like a freight train. There was no us in the world I knew. No space for two men stealing moments in the dark. Yet here we were, inches apart, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. I wanted to ask how long he'd felt this way, how he'd known about me, but my voice failed. Instead, I reached out, my fingers brushing his. It was a small gesture, but it felt like jumping off a cliff. His hand closed around mine, warm and steady, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said softly. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Not with you here. I nodded, unable to speak, my heart a mess of fear and want. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, and in that quiet, fragile moment, we stood there, hands clasped, two men on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time, I wasn't running from it. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, and Hannah was humming as she made coffee. She didn't notice the way Caleb and I avoided each other's eyes, or the way my hands shook as I poured cereal. The normalcy of it all felt like a lie, a fragile shell over the truth we'd touched last night. Caleb left for the garage, and I retreated to my laptop, trying to focus on my thesis. But every word I typed felt hollow, overshadowed by the memory of his hand in mine. Days passed, and the tension between us grew. Stolen glances at dinner, a brush of shoulders in the hallway, a late-night conversation in the garage where Caleb worked on his truck. Each moment was a thread, weaving something I couldn't name but couldn't escape. I started noticing things about him I hadn't before: the way his laugh softened when he talked about his childhood, the way his hands moved with precision, the way his eyes lingered on me when he thought I wasn't looking. But guilt gnawed at me. Hannah was my rock, the sister who'd bandaged my knees and helped me with homework. She didn't deserve this. I tried to pull back, to keep my distance. But Caleb was relentless in his quiet way. One night, as we sat on the porch, the stars bright overhead, he spoke again. I've never felt this alive, Eli. Not in years. Maybe not ever. His words broke me open, and I kissed him. It was quick, desperate, a collision of need and fear. He kissed me back, his hands framing my face. And for a moment, the world was just us. But then we heard the creak of the porch door, and Hannah's voice cut through the night like a blade. Eli. Caleb. What's going on? My heart stopped. Hannah stood in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the warm light spilling from the house. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a question that carried the weight of everything we'd just done. Caleb pulled back, his hands dropping to his sides, and I saw the panic flicker in his eyes before he masked it. Nothing, he said, too quickly, his voice steady but strained. Just talking. Eli was helping me with something. He stood, brushing off his jeans, as if he could dust away the truth. I couldn't move, my body frozen, the taste of him still on my lips. Hannah's eyes darted between us, her brow furrowing. At midnight, on the porch, she stepped closer, her arms crossed, and I saw the hurt in her face, the suspicion she didn't want to name. Eli, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a laugh, but it came out wrong. Brittle. Yeah. Just tired. Long day. I stood, avoiding her gaze, my hands shoved deep in my pockets to hide their trembling. I wanted to run, to disappear into the night. But there was nowhere to go. The farmhouse, once a refuge, felt like a trap. Hannah didn't press, but her silence was worse than questions. She nodded, her lips tight, and went back inside. The door clicked shut, and Caleb let out a breath, his shoulders sagging. That was too close, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the crickets. Too close. I hissed, turning on him. Caleb, this is insane. She's my sister. Your wife. What are we doing? My voice cracked, the guilt and fear crashing over me like a wave. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for pulling me into this. But the truth was I'd walked through that door willingly. He reached for me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. Don't, I said. We can't keep doing this. It's going to destroy her. Caleb's face crumpled, and for a moment, he looked younger, vulnerable, like the boy he must have been before life hardened him. I know, he said. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop feeling this. Eli, I've tried. For years, I've tried. His words hit me hard, echoing my own struggle. I'd spent my life hiding, pretending. But Caleb was the first person who saw me I saw me didn't look away. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and I hated how much I wanted it. What do we do? I asked, my voice small. I don't know, he admitted. But I can't go back to pretending. Not after this. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Hannah grew quieter, her smiles forced, her eyes searching whenever Caleb and I were in the same room. I threw myself into my thesis, spending hours at the local library to avoid the house. But Caleb found ways to reach me. A note slipped into my bag. A text that read, "Meet me at the creek tonight." Each time, I told myself I wouldn't go, but I always did. The creek was our secret place, hidden behind the farmhouse, where willows draped over the water like a curtain. There, in the dark, we could talk, touch, be ourselves. Caleb told me about growing up in a small town like ours, about the father who'd called him weak, about the years he'd spent burying his truth to fit in. I told him about the nights I'd lain awake, hating myself for wanting what I couldn't have. We were two broken pieces, fitting together in a way that felt both impossible and inevitable. But secrets don't stay buried. One evening, as I returned from the library, I found Hannah sitting at the kitchen table, a photo album open in front of her. It was from her wedding to Caleb, 5 years ago. She looked up, her eyes red. "You were just a kid then," she said, her voice soft but heavy. "So quiet, always watching. I thought you were just shy." I sat across from her, my stomach churning. "Hannah, what's wrong?" She closed the album, her fingers lingering on the cover. "I'm not stupid. Eli. I see the way you two look at each other. The way you stop talking when I walk in." Her voice broke, and she looked at me, searching for something I couldn't give. "Tell me I'm wrong." I wanted to lie, to protect her, to protect us. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached across the table, taking her hand, I'm sorry, I whispered, and it was all I could manage before the tears came. Hannah pulled her hand away, standing so fast the chair scraped the floor. I need to talk to Caleb, she said, her voice shaking. She grabbed her keys and left, the door slamming behind her. I sat there, alone, the weight of what we'd done crushing me. When Caleb came home an hour later, he looked like a man who'd been gutted. She knows, he said, his voice hollow. She didn't say it outright, but she knows. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. She asked me if I love her. I said yes, because I do. But it's not the same. I knelt beside him, my heart breaking for all of us. What do we do now? I asked, echoing my question from that night on the porch. He looked at me, his eyes raw. We tell the truth. All of it. No more hiding. The truth was a wildfire, burning through everything we'd built. That night, Caleb and I sat Hannah down in the living room, the same room where we'd laughed over board games and shared Christmas dinners. Now, it felt like a courtroom. Hannah sat on the couch, her arms crossed, her face a mask of hurt and anger. Caleb took a deep breath and started, his voice steady but heavy. Hannah, I love you, he said. But I've been lying to you. To myself. I'm attracted to men. I always have been. And Eli, he glanced at me, and I nodded, my throat tight. Eli and I have feelings for each other. The silence that followed was deafening. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. How long? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. A few weeks, I said, my voice shaking. It started this summer. I didn't mean for it to happen. Hannah, I swear. She laughed, a bitter sound that cut through me. You didn't mean it. Eli, you're my brother. Caleb, you're my husband. And you're telling me you've been sneaking around behind my back. She stood, pacing the room, her hands clenched. Do you know what this feels like? Like I'm the idiot who didn't see it. Hannah. No. Caleb said, standing too. This isn't about you. It's about me not being honest with myself. With you. I thought I could be the man you needed. But I can't keep pretending. She stopped, turning to face him, her eyes blazing. So what now? You leave me. You two run off together. What about me? Caleb. What about our life? I wanted to disappear, to undo every choice that led to this moment. But Caleb stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. I don't know what happens next, Hannah. But I know we can't keep living a lie. You deserve better. We all do. The conversation stretched into the early hours, raw and painful, filled with tears and accusations. Hannah asked questions we couldn't fully answer: how long we'd known, why we didn't stop, what we wanted now. By the end, she was exhausted, her anger giving way to a quiet resignation. I need time, she said finally. I can't look at either of you right now. She left for her friend's house the next day, leaving Caleb and me in a house that felt too big, too empty. We didn't touch, didn't speak much. The weight of what we'd done hung between us. A reminder that love, even real love, could break things. Weeks passed. Hannah filed for divorce, a decision that felt both inevitable and devastating. She moved to Richmond, closer to her job, and we talked sometimes. Brief calls that were polite but distant. I hated myself for hurting her, but I couldn't regret what Caleb and I had found. It was messy, imperfect, but it was real. Caleb and I moved to a small apartment in Charlottesville, a fresh start in a city that didn't know our story. We faced whispers, judgmental looks, but we also found Ali Issa coffee shop owner who welcomed us, a support group for queer couples navigating small-town life. Slowly, we built a life together, one where we could hold hands in public, where we could be ourselves without fear. One evening, as we sat on our tiny balcony, the Blue Ridge Mountains dark against the horizon, Caleb took my hand. "I never thought I'd have this," he said, his voice soft. "A life where I'm not hiding." "Thank you, Eli." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "Thank you for seeing me," I said, "for giving me the courage to be me." The road to that moment was paved with pain, but it taught me something vital: love, in all its forms, is worth fighting for. Not just the love between Caleb and me, but the love we owed our Sylvesto live honestly, to embrace who we are, even when it hurts. Hannah was healing, finding her own path, and I hoped one day she'd forgive us. Until then, Caleb and I would keep moving forward. Two men who'd found each other in the dark, building a life in the light.